Hi, in this tutorial I will give an overview of how you can write a technical report in Microsoft Word. So the contents of this tutorial: first I will introduce the structure of the report. Typically in technical reports you follow the so-called IMRAD structure. IMRAD is short for Introduction, Methods, Results and Discussion. Typically you also need a title page, table of contents, conclusions, references and appendices also, depending on the size of your report. In addition, I will cover how you can create and insert and use figures in technical reports and how you do it in Microsoft Word. The same with tables, equations, and how you insert references and this list of references in the end of the report. Let's start with the structure of the report. As mentioned, a technical report must include this IMRAD structure. This means that you need to have an introduction. You will need to get or give an overview of the methods used in your work or in your project. You need to give an overview of the results that you was getting from your project, and finally a discussion. So this is the so-called IMRAD structure, but typically you will end up with something like this. So typically you always need a title page where you have the title of the project or the system you have made, your name, date, etc. And you can also have a figure here on the title page. Typically you want to also include a table of contents. You need an introduction chapter. So this is typically the first chapter in your report. For larger reports you can also have a preface chapter, but in most cases you typically start with the introduction chapter. You also need to include something about the background of your project. Typically the background part could be a separate chapter, but in most cases you can include it in the introduction chapter. And then you need to have one or more chapters regarding your methods. And then you need to have one or more chapters regarding your results. And then you need to have some discussions, conclusions, references, or a list of references that you have used in your report. And finally, one or more appendices. For smaller reports, typically you don't have any appendices, so that can be removed. But for all reports, you need to follow this basic IMRAD structure. So this means introduction, methods, results, and discussions. And this IMRAD structure indicates what needs to be included in the report, and not necessarily the name of the chapters. So you typically can have multiple chapters that covers the result part or the methods part, etc. So now I have opened my Microsoft Word. And I have created an empty Word document and called it report.docx. So now we are ready to start creating our report. So let's start with the title page. So then you see here you have different styles. You have header 1, header 2, etc. And then you have title. So then I can just start typing my title here. Typically you want to have the title here in the middle. So then you can right click here on title and modify, and then you can select colors here, of course, different size of the text, and here you can center it like this. And then also here under paragraph you can add some spacing before like this. So let's say 100, and after something like this, and then click OK, and OK. So now the title has been centered. And typically the next thing you want to do is to type your name of the person that has written this technical report. And then typically you want to include a date, so then you can go to insert here, select here a date and time. And then you select different formats. So then I just select this date format. You can of course select another format, but click OK then. and the date is included automatically. So that's the title page. Here also below here you can add a figure, but let's do that later. No, we can just create a new page. So then I just select page break here, and then the next page should be the table of contents like this. I will create that later. So now I just create another break page, and let's start creating the different chapters. So the first chapter should be the introduction chapter like this. So then I go back to home, select header 1. I can also click here, modify. Let's change the font. I want a larger font, 22, like this, and click OK. And then I click enter, and then I can start entering the text inside this introduction chapter. But typically also this introduction chapter is the first chapter in the report. So then I go here under this numbering, select this type of numbering. So this means that the introduction chapter becomes the first chapter. So then here you can add more text and figures, etc. And also typically in the introduction chapter you want to include a system sketch. I will show you how you can do that later. But now I just click to insert here, a new page break. So now I want to create the next chapter. And the next chapter is the methods chapters. So in this short report I just named the chapter methods like this, and then I go to home, and this is also heading 1. So now this chapter gets number 2. And I can start entering some text for this chapter, and then I go insert page break in order to create the next chapter, which is results. And results could be one or more chapter, but for this short report I just name the chapter results, go to home, select heading 1, and then you see this gets heading number 3. Then just type text here inside the report chapter. Then I go back to the insert, click a page break, and the next chapter will be discussions. I go to home and click heading 1 and enter the contents of this chapter. Go back to insert, page break, and the next chapter will be, after discussions, will typically be the conclusions. Go to home, select heading 1, and then start typing the contents of this chapter as well. So now we have started created the different chapters. We can also see all the chapters here by going to view and then click the navigation pan, and then you will see or get an overview of the different chapters, and then you can click here to go between the different chapters like this. But now we have created the chapter structures. Let's start to create the table of contents. Then I can just, since Word has a built-in feature for creating a table of contents, I just go to insert, to layout, yeah, so you find it here under references, table of contents, and then you can just click on this small arrow, and then you have different pre-built versions of the table of contents. I just choose this one, and then these table of contents are automatically created by Microsoft Word like this. So now let's assuming we want to create a sub-chapter in the introduction part here called the background, and then we go to home, and this now will not be heading 1 but heading 2. So then you see this automatically gets the chapter number 1 like this, and then we can start entering text and figures, etc. in this sub-chapter. And now if you go back to the table of contents, and then you can just right click here, update field, and update entire table, and then you see this new chapter has been included in the table of contents, like this. So then let's go further with this introduction chapter. So this introduction chapter, as mentioned, is the first chapter, and it has number 1. So then 1 introduction. And in the introduction chapter, you should have a short introduction to your work, the background, problem description, goals, constraints, etc. These background, problem description, goal, constraints could be sub-chapters like this. So here I created a sub-chapter called background. And also typically in the introduction chapter you should include a system sketch. And this system sketch gives an overview of the system that you have been made, the different parts, and the relationship between those. And also, if relevant, you can also mention what kind of software and hardware that have been used in your project or in your system. But let's start creating this system sketch. And a system sketch, then you need to have a proper tool for making the system sketch. Typically, Microsoft PowerPoint is a good tool for creating such a system sketch. So let's open Microsoft PowerPoint and make a simple system sketch and then include it here inside the introduction chapter. So then let's see how we can create a basic system sketch in Microsoft PowerPoint in just a few minutes. So here under Home, you have different objects you can use in your drawings or in your sketches. So assume in our system we have created 2 applications that are communicating with a database. So then I can just start using this rectangle. So assuming I have created a data logging application like this. Here I can also go here to change colors. So I just change this to blue like this. Then here we have different other types of symbols. Here for these basic shapes you have this symbol cylinder, which typically could be the database. So I just click inside the object and create or type database like this. I also can change the color here, assuming this is orange or something. And then I can just copy this one, assuming I have a monitoring application as well, and then I just use some arrows. So then the data logging goes, values from the data logging application goes into the database, and the values from the database are presented in the monitoring application like this. So now basically I've created a simple system sketch. You can also use other types of drawing here. Under insert you have these shapes, but you have also lots of icons. So if I click on icons here, this icon window pops up where I can search for different types of icon, or I can see different categories. Like assuming I want to include a computer, so then I can just search for computer, and then I can just insert, and then I will get a computer, meaning that this data logging application is on a computer or something like this. Let's include another icon. Assuming I want a better icon for the database, so then I can search for database. Then you see our different options here. I just select this one. Then I can remove this one and use this one instead. Something like this. I can also, assuming I want to change the size of these arrows, you can go here to quick styles. You can get different colors, different thicknesses, etc., or go to shape outline, then weight, and then select different size for these arrows. So just to shape outline, weight, like this, and then you can also have different colors, etc. So by using Microsoft PowerPoint, you can create quite advanced system sketches or other sketches in just a few minutes. So now next step now is just to mark all the objects, click to arrange, and then just group them like this. And then I can right click here and save as picture. So then here in the same folder I have my Word document. I can just save it as system sketch like this, and just save it. One more thing, you can also add equations. So you can also insert equations if you want to have equations inside your system sketch. So then you can just click here under insert and select equation, and then you can type whatever you like. Y equals to 3x plus 2 or something. And then I just group them once more, and then just update it, save as picture, and then I just overwrite this previous image and save it. Yes. So now we have made a system sketch with some objects, different types of shapes, arrows, different types of icons, equations, etc. So now I just go back to my application, my document in Microsoft Word. So let's now start to include this system sketch. So then I just go to insert, select picture, and insert picture from this device. And then this pops up. I select my folder where I have saved it on the hard drive, and just double click and then insert it. Typically I want to center the figures on the screen like this. I just select center here. And now the next now is to immediately after you have inserted a figure, then you need to insert a figure caption. This means you need to have a figure number and a figure title. So then I just right click on it and select insert caption, and then automatically you get this caption figure 1.1. So this means that this is the first figure in chapter number 1, and then the figure caption should always be below the figure. So then I just click OK like this, and now next I just enter a colon and a name of or a title of this figure. So then I can type something like this: system overview of the data logging system or something. So just make sure that you enter a title here that gives meaning. So just don't enter system overview. So then the reader don't understand system overview of what. So then typically need to enter a entire sentence here like this: system overview of the data logging system or whatever. So the title needs to give meaning to the reader of the document. The next thing we need to do immediately after we have inserted this figure caption with a figure number and a figure title, you need to refer to this figure as part of your text. So then here I can type something like this in the system overview and then I go here to references, select cross reference, and then I get this window where I can select reference type, and then in this case I select figure. I uncheck this one and then select only label and number, and then Here typically you will have a list of figures here, but so far we have only created one figure, so then I just select this one, click insert, and then you see this figure number has been automatically inserted here as part of the text, and then I can just click close. So in the system overview in figure 1.1 we see that the system consists of a data logging application, etc. So then you just type and describe the figure here. So every time you insert a figure in a technical report, start to right click, insert a caption, and then this number is automatically inserted, and then you need to type a proper figure title, and then when this is done you need to refer to this figure as part of the text like this, and then just go to references and select cross-reference in order to automatically add a reference to this particular figure in the text. And then you need to describe the figure as part of your text. So just don't insert a lot of figures without explanations or referring to the figures inside the text like this. So now we know how to insert figures, create figure captions, and refer to the figures in the text. Next, let's see how we can insert and refer to tables. Then assuming here in the result chapter I want to insert a table, so then I just go to insert and select table, and then assuming I have 4 columns and 7 rows like this. Then we have the table ready. And also here you can select different types of styles. You can select this one. So then you have this header here. So then I can just type X, Y, something like this. Assuming I don't want to have this one, I can just delete those like this. Typically also the table should be centered on the page like this. And now, just like you do for figures, you need to insert a caption for this table, but for tables the caption should be above the table and not below like it is for figures. So then I just start inserting a caption here for this table. So then I just go to references, insert caption, and then we have different types of labels here. We have figure, equation, and table. So then I just select table and then position above selected item, and then click OK. Then I can also center it on the page like this. So now automatically this was created, this caption table 3.1, and then I can just for figures type a title for this table. Results of the logging data for temperature sensor, or something like this. And now I have created the table with some contents. Like this. And now I need to insert also here a reference for this table. So then we see then I go to references, click cross-reference, and here on the reference type I select table, I select only label and number, and then here in the list you get a list of all the tables in your document. So far we have only created one table, so I just select this one and click insert, and then you see this table numbering has been inserted automatically. So we see in table 3.1 that the data is well structured or whatever, etc. So just for the same as for your when you're inserting figures, when you create and insert tables, you need to have a table caption with a table number and a table title, and then you also need to refer to that table as part of the text and explain it. And remember, the table caption is above the table, while for figures the figure caption is below the figure, like this. Next, let's see how we can create equations in a technical report. So assuming as part of the methods part we want to include an equation. So then I start to go here under insert, and then you have the equation editor here. So I just click on this one, and then assume I just want to include this basic equation 2x plus 5 or something. So that's the basic equation. But typically we need to include just for figure, as we do for figures and tables, we need to include equation number, and typically the equation number is centered to the right of the page here, and also we need to refer to that equation as part of the text. Typically in a Word is has not so good built-in features for creating equation numbers and refer to those in the text. So typically we want to we can do this by creating a table. So I create a table here with 3 columns like this, and then typically we want to have the equation itself centered on the page like this, and then we want to have the equation number here to the right. So then I just go to to references and select insert caption. Then here you can select the different labels. Typically you have one for figure and one for table. If you don't have one for equation, you can just go to new label and create a new label called equation. But I select this one I have already, equation, and then you see the equation number is 2.1 because this is the first equation in chapter number 2. So then I just click OK, and then you see it has been included or inserted here, but I want to have it here to the right. So also I'm here in this cell, I just go to this one and select align right. So because this equation number should be to the right of the equation, and typically also should have include some parentheses like this. So the next thing you need to do now is just to select the table and go to design, to table design, and then you go to borders here, and then just select no border, and then you see no, you cannot see that the equation is included in this table, and that the equation number is also included in this table. So the next thing we need now is to refer to that equation as part of the text. So then I just start typing some text. As we see from, and then I go to references, select cross references, and then no reference type is equation, and then only label and number, and then click insert like this. So then I can type something like this. So as we see from equation 2.1, sensor has a linear relationship between the input and the output, or whatever. So that's how you create equations using the equation editor. Insert equation number and refer to that equation as part of the text. So you need to refer to the equation and explain the equation as part of the text. So you always need to do that, both for figures, for tables, and for equations. So all these three types need to have a number, and then you need to refer to them as part of the text like this. So the next important thing we need to do or include in our technical report is the references. So assuming here in the methods part I have used information from different types of textbooks, so then here I can start writing something like this. So assuming I have created some programming applications, or I have created, as you saw earlier in the system sketch, we have created two applications, a data logging application and a data monitoring application. So assume this application has been based on some examples from a given textbook. So then I can just enter something like this. The applications are based on some programming examples from, and then we need to insert a reference. So then you go to references here, then you have here insert citation, then I just click add new source. Then the first thing I need to think about is type of source. Is it a book section, a journal, report, website, etc. So assume I have taking these programming examples from a book, so then I select book. First thing we need to include is the name of the author. So assume the author is Elvis Presley or whatever. The title is web programming. Year is 2010. And the publisher is the company that has published this book. It could be different types of publishers. Assuming this book has been published by Pearson or something. Then you can also here click show all fields, so then you will get more fields. You can type city, state, country, editor, volume, etc. So there are lots of fields you can fill out here. So you can fill out as many of these fields as you know, but typically at least you need to fill out the author, the title, year, and the publisher. So then I can just click OK, and then you see these references has been included here automatically by Microsoft Word. So then the application are based on some programming examples from the source or the reference number 1. Then I can type some more text and then assume I want to include another reference. Then the methods used in the etc. is from, and then I just go to insert another one. And then assuming we have found some methods in another textbook, then I just type a new author here. Sylvester Stallone or something has written a textbook called Thematical Methods in 2015, and the publisher is also here, Person, and then I just click OK, and then you see this new reference has been created here. So now I have two references in my technical report, 1 and 2. And now the next step is to include these references in the reference list in the end of the document. So typically after the conclusion, so if I just go here and then insert a page break, then I want to create the reference list here at the end of the document. So then I go back to references. Then here under bibliography, I just select one of the built-in types. So then I just select this one, references. And then you see the reference list has been made automatically by the system. And also you see the order here is in the same order. So then the first reference here is 1, is web programming by Elvis Presley, and then reference number 2 is mathematical methods by Sylvester Stallone. And then this is 1 and 2, and that's the same order as they appear here in the text. So this is how you make references in a technical report using Microsoft Word. So then you find all the tools you need here under references, and then insert here in order to insert the references in the text, and then finally here at the end of the document you create this reference list. And then when you insert new references in the text, this list will be automatically updated by Microsoft Word. So you don't need to do anything here now. So then this list will be automatically updated every time that you put in a new reference somewhere in your text. And also you see there are different types of styles. So typically in a technical report we use this style called IEEE, which is the default and recommended standard for technical reports. So let's summarize. Now we have created the main sections or the main chapters of this technical report. We started with a title page where we included our name and a date, and then we have a title, of course. Then we created this table of contents, and then in order to update this automatically you can just click here, update table, and then select update entire table, and then you see also this new references chapter has been included in the table of contents. So title should be on a separate page, then table of contents should be on a separate page, and then typically also each of the chapters should be or start on a separate page. So then you just use this insert and page break in order to start the next chapter on an empty page like this. And then the introduction chapter is the first chapter. It starts with the number 1, and here in the introduction chapter you shortly introduce your work, your background, the problem description, the goal, constraints, etc. with your project and the system you have created. And also typically you should give an overview of the software, or just list the software and the hardware that you have used in the project, and you should include a system sketch. And when you include or insert figures, make sure that you include also a figure caption with a figure number and a meaningful figure title here and a figure number. And then in the text typically above or below the figure, you need to refer to that figure with the specific figure number and then explain the figure in details as part of the text. Typically, you have different chapters, but typically you can have in each chapter you can have 3 types of levels. So you go here under home, and then you have the header one, which is the header used for the chapter names. Then you have this level number 2, and then you have the third one, level number 3. So typically you should not have more than 3 levels within a chapter. So then this is the chapter, subchapter, and then subchapter. So typically no more than 3 levels within the different chapters. Next, if we need to insert or use equations, this is how you insert equations in Microsoft Word. You use the equation editor, which you find here under Insert and Equations. And the equations should be centered in the text, and then you should have an equation number to the right, and then you should also refer and explain the equation as part of the text. So this is figures, equations, and then we have tables. And you do the same here, but the table caption should be above the table, while for figures it should be below. So figures, the text, the figure caption should be below, while for tables it should be above the table. So then we have made the different chapters: introduction, methods, and the methods could be 1 or more chapters depending on the size of your report. Results could also be 1 or more chapters depending on the size of your report. Then you need to have discussions and a conclusion and a list of references that are automatically created or updated each time we include references as part of our text like this. So then let's summarize. Your report structure in a technical report should follow the emerald structure, meaning you need to have an introduction. You give an overview of the methods used, the results, and you need to discuss the results. And this emerald structure doesn't indicate the name of the chapters, but it indicates the structure of the report. And typically you end up with chapters like this. You can have a title page, a table of contents, an introduction chapter. You can have a background chapter, typically included in the introduction chapter. You can have 1 or more chapters regarding the methods used, 1 or more chapters regarding the results of your work, a discussion chapter, and a conclusion chapter, and then a list of references. And for larger reports, you typically have 1 or more appendices. And the first chapter is the introduction chapter. And in the introduction chapter, you should have a short introduction to your work, the background, problem description, goal, constraints, etc. And typically you should also include a system sketch in this chapter. And you can also mention or give a list of the software and hardware that you have used in your system or in your project. Next, you need to have 1 or more chapters regarding your methods. And the main purpose of the methods section is to provide enough details for a person to repeat your study or your work, and the person should be able to reproduce the results based on the information in the methods part. And typically equipment and materials that you have used should be described here. Typically, if you create some kind of a software, you can also include the implementation part here. You should document your code or your implementation using flowcharts, user case diagrams, or similar. And you can also include other types of sketches that you think are relevant in order to explain your work. As mentioned, you need to document your code or your implementation using some flowcharts, use case diagrams, etc. But just put in all the code in the method chapter, hundreds of code lines or hundreds of pages with codes, doesn't make sense. So typically you need to document the code, but you do it by using flowcharts, use case diagrams, or similar charts or diagrams. And you can also include some small code snippets where you explain important parts of your software. And if you have some screenshots, etc., you can also include those. But typically the rest of the code or the entire code can be available online for download. Then next, the results part, or the results section, is the section where you present the results of your work. And typically here you need to include different types of figures, sketches, tables, etc. that are explaining these results. So you need in this section to explain and interpret your work and your results in a way that are understandable for the reader of the report. And make sure that you process and format your data and the results so it's understandable and give meaning for the reader of the report. And note that the result part can consist of one or more chapters depending on the size of your work. And in the next chapter, the discussion chapters, one of the most important part of the report is to discuss and analyze the results in detail. Examples: why did you not get the expected results? Was there some noise in your measurements that you need to inform about and discuss? And what could you have done to improve it, etc. So that's the discussion part, or the discussion chapter in your report. Next is the conclusion part, or the conclusion chapter. And a conclusion is always needed in a technical report, so you cannot make a technical report without having a conclusion. So here you should summarize your results and draw conclusions, and you should not write how much you have learned, if this is a school project, etc. So here is some bad examples that you should not include in your conclusion. Example: I have learned much doing this assignment. This is not something you should include in the conclusion. Or this was very useful and I will need this when I get a job, etc. Not include this in your conclusion. So you should focus on your results, not just list up what you have done or how much you have learned by doing this. Of course, it's nice that you have learned a lot by doing this project, but it's not relevant in the conclusion chapter. Next, and the final chapter before any appendices is the reference list. And in technical reports you typically use the IEEE standard when you do your references. And inside the text, the references are numbered in the order they appear in the text, and they are closed by square brackets like this. So this is the first reference, second reference, etc. And then after the conclusion chapter, you include a chapter called reference list or something, or references or reference list. And then here you list all the references that you use inside your report. And if you use the built-in features in Microsoft Word, this reference list will be created automatically and updated automatically by Microsoft Word. And so you need to remember to refer to all the references in the reference list in your text and in the same order as they appear in that list. And don't wait to include your references. Make sure to include your references immediately when writing the text and don't later. And that goes The same for figure numbers and figure titles, etc. Do it immediately and make sure to refer to the figures also immediately as part of your text. So in the reference list, the following needs to be included: who, typically the name of the author; when, the year, if you refer to a book, when was the book created, the year of when the book has been created; what, the title of the book, if it's a book; and where, who is the publisher, include ISBN number. If it's a web page, you need to include an URL, etc. And here you see some examples from the reference list. Here you see an example how it looks like when you have a book in your reference list. Here is a book with more than one authors. Here is a reference to a website. Here is a master thesis. Here is a ebook, etc. But you don't need to worry about the format of these references in the reference list if you use the built-in feature in Microsoft Word. So this list of references will then be automatically created by Microsoft Word. So that's all. So good luck writing your technical reports. Thank you.